Welcome to 101. I'm Rick Kaplan. My guest today is Wayne O'Neill of Reset, and this is part two of, obviously a two-part series. Wayne, how are you today?
I'm great. Missed talking to you over the last week, so I'm glad to get back to part two.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the information is great, especially for the times we're in right now,
Right.
Going forward as well. So what do you think that investors, where do you think they're going to be placing money for capital projects in the United States?
Well, the biggest priority, not just because of COVID, but is definitely healthcare. I get tons and tons of requests to invest in, and not just the big systems, but also the second tier healthcare systems. After that, higher education. And I know higher education looks a little bit turbulent. Everybody's worried about, how are we going to balance this of sports and kids coming back on campus? But actually, they're interested in both the private side, interestingly enough, as well as public education. But something that's been jumping up over the last few weeks is government, state government, county government, cities, as they start to experience the pain of budgets. That has become more and more attractive to the investment community. And, right now we're working with 5 different states to try to figure out how to stand them up, and leveraging those offshore funds. So that's really the priorities right now.
Yeah, and I can understand that because I was just reading the other day that the Boston hospitals, now that I'm not talking about all of healthcare, but Boston hospitals, they're going to be in the hole about $5 billion.
Totally believable.
There's going to be a lot of money needed in the next 6 to 8 months, I would think.
And Boston healthcare is robust. Boston healthcare is, it's a big city. It's a lot of research. The clinicians are top of their field, but still they have the challenges that everybody has. It's kind of like what I see in my backyard, the Texas Medical Center, I see in Chicago, I see in San Francisco. Even the best systems who are financially very conservative have just reached this point where they have to choose between spending and hoarding money. And that's why this infusion of more creative financial solutions is just timely. It was timely before, but now it's gone from a nice discussion to a have-to discussion. That's what I see really occurring. And I can talk more about, how that gets scoped out, but that's what's going on now.
And people want to reach out to you.
Yes.
They can either contact me and I can give them all your information, or they can reach out to Reset and just ask for Wayne O'Neill.
Absolutely.
So what are an example of assets that project owners could be monetizing right now?
Well, yeah, I'll just go right from a call we had this morning. It was a pretty large system that, when we looked at all of their mobility assets, and I'd say mobility, not just parking, because that's what it really is like, the assets that people use to get to campuses. And some of it's parking, but some of it is also Uber and Lyft and public transportation also. All of those rolled in are normally worth a pretty significant concession value. For a 10 to 15 hospital system, that could be anywhere from, 300 million to 500 million. So just starting with that, piece of cash for a 30 to 50 year engagement on a concession, that's pretty shocking to a lot of systems. The thing that becomes even more interesting is for them to learn that their credit rating itself is worth a significant amount of money. In this particular case, we had a discussion with that system, and they're trying to stand up a couple of bed towers and then some micro hospitals and then some ambulatory care. They were sitting on another $400-500 million just based on their credit rating alone. It could be for a 20-year period of time. It could be for longer. But lots of times they're used to, having that impact their bond rating. This doesn't impact their bond rating at all. This is totally off balance sheet. So again, it's not like people don't know about this, but this is a time of creativity with the crisis that's on top of us. That's what's going on there. So
even the dog agrees with you.
yeah, sorry for that.
So, you're talking about, the credit ratings and things like that. So all parties that benefit from special purpose entities or
Yes,
securitized credit, tenant lease.
right.
So you're speaking to that type of a client.
That's correct. That's correct. And look, what's also important. So it does beg the question of like, how do you engage? And I can talk this about whether it's a healthcare system or a higher ed system. It's definitely the people who have operational responsibility who are then connected to mission. Mission, where that if you have dollars and it's not connected to mission, this doesn't really work. And that's why that special purpose entity structure is so important in all this. It's not a matter of just rolling up a wheelbarrow full of money and go, here it is. It's kind of like, I mean, again, I'll give you the example of the discussion we had this morning is that they were really concerned about how do they pull more of their elderly demographic back into their system. And so they had to change that strategy. Before they would have put ambulatory care right on the main campus. Now they're trying to move it out, in more of a suburban setting and make this easier and kind of mitigate fear and also support the clinicians that would serve that population. That's mission. That's operations. And so it's got to be money connected with missions and operations and clinical aspects that makes it work. It's the same thing that happens in higher education. And for that matter, it's the same thing that happens in government, the mission of serving citizenry and voters. So if that makes sense, it's not just a financial transaction. It's got to be more strategic.
So, there are some people that, especially in healthcare, some were doing fairly decent and some
Yes.
were struggling months prior to this whole thing. Where do you think they stand?
I think they're having a tough time. I think I think the top of the market is having a tough time, but everybody is helpable, if you will. But we have our hands full, to be honest, with the top players, because they're probably the best at adjusting to mission. They're more willing to throw out, master planning and previous capital improvement planning and kind of go, what do we need to do to serve our clients? What do we need to do to serve our stakeholders? What do we need to do to be strategic? Those people are easier to help. They all kind of want and need money, but the people that can help us engage like that makes the process go faster. Look, I mean, just to calibrate this a little bit, a securitized credit tenant lease with sovereign wealth fund could go as fast as 30 to 60 days. That many times is an infusion to stand up a bed tower that's been stalled because everybody wants to hoard money. But that's how important all this is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if someone isn't being proactive in starting this at this point.
Yes.
And they're waiting 3-4 months.
Right.
Now you're talking. Now their credit ratings could be falling.
Could be, and part of our practice, we serve a lot of design and construction firms, and so they're kind of the canary in the coal mine. They hear about scope that is being stalled, and so look, this is not a selling process. This is an engagement process, and so you're exactly right. If you continue to just wait, your environment will deteriorate. Whereas if you prophylactically deal with it and kind of look at what all your options are, most of the time you would never guess that the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund would want to invest in your healthcare system or in your campus. That's not the fault of anybody. That's not a competence issue. But I find that disconnect is virtually everywhere in every marketplace. And again, I see New England and New York as very, very sophisticated markets, but they still need solutions and creative solutions that they've not been leveraging all along.
So the discussion has to begin now.
That's correct. It's an immediate thing, and it's got to be proactive, because here's another thing from our first session. This is not somewhat where you come in and just do a PowerPoint and everybody understands. You got to talk about it, let everybody sleep on it for a couple, 3 days, talk about it, sleep on it, socialize it internally. It's a bigger strategic discussion, because again, what I find is that mission is evolving all the time.
So this fits right into the flow of what we're talking about. Introducing this disruptive funding model to the stakeholders.
Right.
In the current economy, how do you think that that will be received?
Well, I think it's always received. I mean, I believe in catastrophizing things, and I always tell clients that when we start the discussion, you need to kind of kick the can around a little bit, and you need to kind of look at everything with a third eye. I get that, but this is a disruptive time, and normally, look, here's the way this goes. There's a ton of excitement when we all of a sudden tell a system you can have access to $600 to $800 million of capital that you didn't even realize. It's kind of like finding money in your jeans that that you hadn't been wearing for a while, and there's big excitement. Then they kind of pull, oh wait a minute, there's got to be a catch here. This got to be some plot that we don't really see. What's the catch? Then we come back to mission. Then we come back to where do you need to go, because part of all this is if it's not about standing up the system for patients, for clinicians, same thing on higher education, for students, for parents, for the people that run the university, it's not going to work. It can't be just throwing money at it. It's got to be connected to how that institution makes an impact in the community, because that's what all the investors pay attention to. That's what makes America, by the way, pretty attractive.
So if you had 3 bullet points,
yes,
to put out to people that are either investing or own a healthcare facility or any type of property, really, what would those 3 bullet points be that you would?
Well, to examine, look, to me, it all starts, the first bullet point is it starts with your customers, in any vertical. In healthcare, it's patients, but then look at your stakeholders pretty quickly. So how are you going to serve them in the future? And how does, how do building envelopes and infrastructure help to serve that? It's not that everything that's been done up until now is wrong, but how is that all connected? So I would look at how you're going to serve, and then how do you need to respond to from a project standpoint and a scoping standpoint, and then next, how are you going to socialize that out? The special purpose entity is really important structure, because it's not the same. Just send out a request for proposal. Everyone comes in and does an interview. This is really kind of a sole source, collaborative kind of solution where a whole team comes together connected to a mission. That's different. That's really disruptive. And getting your arms around that's probably the third leg of the stool. And that's got to, when I say get your arms around it, it's got to be the top leadership level, people that really own mission. They've got to get their arms around it and see it as being leveraged, not just being bought.
Well, it's all valuable information, and I'm sure people that that are looking for the funding,
yes,
they need to get out there right now.
Right.
And if they want to talk to anyone, it's got to be to Wayne O'Neill.
I think there's more people than me, but look, but
you're the only one on the interview.
I appreciate that. Look, I have a special soft spot for my clients who are in design and construction. They're all suffering in a different way too, but they all know. We put I'll just leave you with this final note. Several of our Wall Street partners just said, hey, listen, we need to do 10 to 15 credit tenant lease projects that are $100 to $400 million. Could you go out to your practice and find those? And it's funny. I started with construction firms, and I went to design firms. It didn't take me that long to find projects that were shovel ready and had stalled. And then from there, it wasn't too tough to start those discussions with those systems. So sometimes it's everybody is sitting on information that's hiding in plain sight, and that's how our practice kind of all works together. So.
Well, they can throw me 10 million. I can find something to use it with. Wayne, I want to thank you, Wayne. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Thank you.
Talking with Wayne O'Neill of Reset, and this was part 2. And if you missed the first one, you can go back on YouTube and see the first one. This is going to be airing this week as well. Again, a thank you, Wayne. Like I said, always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, can't wait to get back to New England. Can't wait for I don't know how soon everybody's going to be able to travel, but can't wait to see you. It's nice to see you like this, but I want to see you more in person. So thanks.
I appreciate it. Same gesture back at you.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Wayne.
Goodbye.
Thank you for watching today's interview. If you'd like to be a guest, a sponsor, or even advertise in the New England Real Estate Journal, you'll find our contact information in the description box below. You can also find all our social media platforms so you can follow us, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.